There was a teacher who had his very favorite student. This child in the fifth grade always followed his teacher everywhere. He completed his school and then walked with his teacher to the teacher's house. Afterward, he finished his homework and returned to his own place. He always loved to be around his teacher and believed that his teacher was very powerful and intelligent. He always listened to his teacher. After a while, his examinations were nearing, and he was now very busy with his teacher, revising the lessons and taking some small tests that his teacher gave him. After the paper evaluation, teacher found that he was weak in multiplication and failed a certain test. So, the teacher always told him that he need to be very careful because he had failed. Their study sessions continued as usual, but because the teacher was very concerned about his student, he always asked him to be cautious because he had failed, and the student nodded. Finally, the day before his main examinations, he came to his teacher to clear some doubts. Teacher cleared all his doubts, and when the student was leaving, the teacher stopped him and reminded him to be cautious because he had failed. Then the teacher wished him all the best, and the student nodded and left. Next day at school, teacher entered the classroom as an invigilator, where his favorite student was taking an exam. They smiled at each other, and the teacher distributed question papers and answer sheets to all the students, and the examination began. After a while, teacher glanced at his favorite student's answer sheet and suddenly felt panic because it was mostly empty. He noticed that the question paper was filled with multiplication questions, but his student wasn't attempting any of them. Instead, the student was only answering some other familiar questions. The teacher became very furious. But the exam hall was very quiet, so he couldn't yell at his student for avoiding the questions. He waited patiently until the exam was over. Once the exam was finished, he returned home, still feeling furious, and found his student waiting for him with a sad expression. The teacher asked him, "Why haven't you at least tried to solve the questions?" And continued that he had taught him how to solve those questions during their study sessions. The student calmly listened and said, "But I failed in that. So even if I try, I will probably fail again." The teacher was visibly very furious now. He yelled at him, "Why didn't you at least try? What if you could solve those questions? What were you thinking while you sat there doing nothing?" Student responded calmly. The words in my mind were, "I failed, so I may fail again. Why try unnecessarily?" The teacher suddenly lost his anger somewhere. He painfully understood that by repeatedly telling and reminding him about his failure, he unknowingly imprinted the same thoughts in his student's mind, which had now become a barrier for him. The teacher decided to change the words in the student's mind. The teacher asked the student to get ready for their usual study sessions, and the student nodded. Then teacher instructed his student to take out his math textbook and try to solve the problems he had marked. When the student opened the textbook, he saw many multiplication problems were marked with very few problems on another topics. Student looked at his teacher and the teacher smiled and said, "Only if you try, you could solve them and earn high scores." Then student gestured as if understanding and attempted to solve the questions, but he could not. But to his surprise, the teacher did not scold him. Instead, the teacher assigned all those problems as homework. Before the student left, the teacher stopped him and repeated, "Only if you try, you could solve them and earn high scores." Student nodded and left. During each of their subsequent study sessions, the teacher gave his student around 20 multiplication problems and repeated, "Only if you try, you could solve them and earn high scores." Student nodded. Then one day, all his examinations were over. He went to his teacher's house and the teacher told him that today he was going to have a sudden math test. Student nodded. The teacher then took a max question paper, changed the values and gave him the modified questions to solve. After about an hour, teacher went to check on his student and to his surprise, the student had actually solved a good number of questions. He was even attempting the question that the teacher had included just to test if he would try solving it. This particular question combined all the concepts the student had learned so far, but the entire result depended on the multiplication part. Teacher's face lit up with happiness as he saw that his student had finally learned to succeed even in situations he had feared the most. Teacher corrected the exam paper and the student scored 85 out of 100. Teacher called the student and asked, "How did you score 85?" Student smiled upon hearing his score and then said, "You told me only if I try I could solve the questions and win great scores. Whenever I feel weak, these words come to my mind." The teacher smiled and gave him a pen as a gift, saying, "This is for the winner in you who made great improvement from 30 to 85 marks out of 100. The student smiled and rushed to his house with his gift. The teacher felt really happy, and from then on, their study sessions seemed to be more productive and happier ones. The student topped his class in the next examinations and received book as a gift. The teacher had truly changed the mindset of his favorite student with a different combination of words. So, friends, now let us see what is the connection between this story and self-love. What if I say that the teacher and student represent two aspects of our own character? Can you understand? Or will you be confused? Let me clarify it. We are the teacher in the story, and our mind is the student who always follows us. Without knowing that we are teachers for our own minds, we often rush to tell ourselves or others that we are weak and destined to fail. People who hear these words may either disregard them or not pay much attention towards it. However, our minds, being an obedient student, will repeat those words, internalizing them as "I am weak and meant to fail." Can you understand? So, my friend, if you are not given a toolbox to deal with a problem, what will you ever try to look for the toolbox? What will be your thoughts regarding this? When a problem arises, you might think, of course, this problem is very complicated, but since I don't have a toolbox, it's okay for me to fail, right? Likewise, if you keep on telling yourself that you are a failure or weak, will your mind ever try to go against you? Or will it remain as an obedient student? It will indeed act as an obedient student, ensuring that your words are fully accepted and allowing you to fail miserably. This is because the teacher in you has told your mind that it is weak and that there is no need to search for a toolbox, meaning solutions or strategies to deal with the problems. You have convinced your mind that it is incapable of doing so. Your mind typically won't contradict your strong beliefs, but you have the power to change the ideas your mind holds about you. For example, if you fail in any situation in life, you can simply think about the situation, and in the end, what truly matters is how you project yourself. You can say, "Of course, I failed this time, but now I know more about the situation, so I have learned something. Next time, I will handle it in a fantastic way and ensure that I succeed because I am strong, intelligent, and always have great ways to deal with everything in my life." So, whenever your mind brings back the memory of your past failures, make sure you remember the lessons from it and then acknowledge it with optimistic lines such as, "I am strong, intelligent, and so I have great ways to deal with everything in my life." Gradually, your mind will recognize that it has been given a toolbox, meaning the ability to seek solutions, and it needs to use it. Being a good student, it will always put forth great efforts in solving problems and achieving success because a determined mind is very powerful. You would be amazed at times when your mind provides you with ideas to deal with your situations, just like the student in our story who attempted to solve the biggest question that his teacher included at the end of question paper. So, the only thing your mind needs from you is your faith in yourself. So, always remember, no one can start a race with the thought that they are failure. If they do so, the chances of their failure are greater than their chances of success. I wish the teacher in you becomes very wise to design the syllabus for the student in you and wins great. Being a person who believes in self love, it is always important to empower your mind. Always acknowledge failures. Learn from it. But don't define yourself as failure. Think about it, friend. By telling you all this, your own friend is vanishing with a very last question to you guys. Friends,